wake up call. So hopefully everybody can roll with it here. So good. Now we're recording. So it's official. Everything you say is on the record. We can start with our approval of the minutes from August 8th. Again, which I was unfortunately not at, but those of you who were, any corrections, amendments, edits to add to that document? Okay, then we will consider that approved by consensus. So member reports. So any members have any activities to report outside of our agenda items? Sure, yeah, Amy, please.
So we are up and running. I am with deliberation and discourse again. Jane, I just emailed you a few minutes ago.
Okay.
From my school email. We have 2 fantastic NEAG grad student interns this year.
Really? Oh, great. Okay.
It is so exciting. Derek and Felicia may have met them. Did you 2 meet them yet?
I did in Spanish class.
Okay. And Derek, yes, no? There were a couple people they missed.
Yes, during physics.
Super. Okay. So they went around and made introductions to some of our heavy hitters like Derek and Felicia. And Jane, I just wrote you and looped you in with them. I know they've reached out to Glenn already. They've sent a message to the Human Rights Commission, but they're going to be fantastic. We will be presenting at the NCTE, the National Council of Teachers of English Conference, which was virtual. It was going to be in Kentucky, but now we're going virtual, and we're going to be reporting on what we've been doing in terms of our deliberation, discourse, and social justice. So that's exciting. And then I also registered for a series of conferences, webinars myself, that are being offered through NCTE on critical race theory. Jane, I still need to watch your video. It's been up on my tabs forever, but I will watch it. And
I have a new blog.
Oh, good.
That one I can send you.
Sure. Okay. And equity and justice and writing in the classroom. So I'm pretty excited about that. So that's my news.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Other member reports? Yes, Katie.
I can share. So we are in program startup mode for the year at Youth Services. So we have a lot of our in-person stuff coming back for positive youth development, which is really exciting with our mentoring programs, and bringing back our other after-school programs into like real life instead of virtual this year. So we'll be doing our Mansfield Youth Voice and Mansfield Youth Pride groups, both happening at MMS this year, so that kids can stay and then just take the late bus home, rather than try to kind of figure out if we're going to have enough space in our offices to do social distancing and things like that. And especially with the teen center being a little bit in flux right now, we wouldn't have the same space where kids could go and hang out afterwards if they needed to wait for pickup. So those will be getting started actually on the 20th, the same time the Mansfield Middle School after school clubs are starting. And that we're really excited about that. We got to give away some pronoun pins last night at open house for MMS, and there's more going out tonight at round 2 of MMS open house. So that is always exciting things and exciting times for us. And then I'm gonna be like, hey, Amy, I have a question for you. Now that y'all are up and running with your GSA in the near future, do you guys want to do some painting?
Yes, I would say that we would. So yes, we have, and Kate, I'm glad you said something. We have a few people who've already reached out to us to join the club. We are changing the name just slightly to the Gender and Sexuality Alliance so that it's even broader and what have you. So kids are feeling good about that. And we're hoping to put together some informational packets for staff coming up soon. So I think our first meeting is around the same time. It's sometime that week. So 22nd, 23rd, I'm not sure yet, but yeah. things are up and going. We would love to coordinate. We'll be in touch, Katie.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Any other member reports? Okay, well,
I have a
thank
thing.
Jane, please.
It's not a report, it's just a notice. This Saturday afternoon at 2:00, the NAACP is running a video called The First Step. It is a phenomenally good movie and followed by discussion. And all you have to do is sign up on Facebook page and you'll get the link to go to it. And we're running the movie. We've got the producers as the commentators plus 3 guys who were incarcerated to come and run the discussion afterward. I'm going to facilitate, but it's basically going to be a group conversation. So if you feel like spending 3 hours on watching a man who brought people together who never would have talked to each other in the most brilliant way, come. It's a fantastic movie, even if you can't stay for the discussion. I urge people to attend, tell all your friends.
Great. Can you say the date and time of that
Saturday
again?
afternoon at 2:00.
Great. Thank you, Jane. All right. Last call for member reports. I don't know if there are any reports from Alaska or anything that need to happen, but no. Okay, human rights are okay up there. Okay, all good. We're really quite delighted to have a special guest tonight to help us address our first agenda item, which is the survey, which is part of our old business, the analysis of the Human Rights Survey that we put out last month. And we've been very grateful to have the assistance of someone who can help us actually do the quantitative analysis of the survey responses. Pam Peters, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for what you're doing. And so we wanted to have an opportunity for Pam to share a little bit about what she's finding, for the commission to ask any questions they have, and for us to discuss what we want to do in terms of next steps of putting together our report. So why don't I turn it over to Pam now? And I don't know if you need to share your screen at all, Pam, if there's anything, but Monica, if you can enable screen sharing, that would be terrific.
Yeah, I'm definitely I put together some, they're not beautiful, but some slides so you guys can see some of the numbers. So I am going to, let's see, it looks like I can do that. So that's all set. I have about 12 screens going here on my computer. So let's see. Okay, can you all see that? It says Mansfield Human Rights Survey. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go through these really, really quickly because I know that you guys have lots of other stuff to talk about. Feel free to interrupt if you have questions, and definitely feel free to, ask questions at the end. Okay. So this is a really small sample. I know it was a first run. I just put together, these are the largest groups in each of the demographic categories that you can see on the screen. So I want to explain a couple of things. I combined the race and ethnicity questions, and anyone who selected white and Latinx or white and Jewish, I put them into that other category, the Latinx or Jewish. So white in this case is white, right? Without one of those other categories. So these, like I said, these are the largest groups. I combined in the religion category. The largest single category we had was atheist, but I wasn't quite sure that was getting us the whole picture because Christian was split into so many different groups. So I combined those, and then I combined the sort of not religious, atheist, agnostic together, and those each are the same, and the largest groups in Mansfield. The rest of these you can kind of see for yourself. It was really challenging to do the work. There's some survey issues that we can talk about if you guys decide to do another iteration that made some of the analyses or some of the categories tricky. I won't get into all of that right now, but these are, like I said, the largest groups that we had that responded to the survey. So because I don't know you all what your statistical background is, so this is a very quick lesson. When you have categorical data, so all of the demographics were categories and the outcome variables were yes, no, or 1 of 5 choices, things like that. Those are all categorical variables. There are different statistical techniques you need to use. So you couldn't use things like correlations or tests to see if averages are different, things like that. So I did a chi-square test, and what that does is it figures out if, for example, race had no effect on whatever the outcome is, you would expect that for each race, members would be distributed through each of the other response categories in the same proportions, right, for each race. And so this test compares those expected frequencies to what we actually observed, and then sees if there's a significant difference between the two. There may be a difference, but it might not be statistically significant. In lots of cases, those categories were too small to really run valid tests. So I'm going to just show you what I feel okay about making conclusions with. And just to be super clear, there's no causation. It just says there's a relationship between them, because we all know there's a ton of other factors that can influence these things. So our first group of outcomes were related to discrimination. You all asked a bunch of questions about discrimination. You asked, have people experienced discrimination in Mansfield? And this is just simple frequencies and percents. And you can see here, we're doing a pretty good job here in Mansfield. I think 63% said never. Would we like that to be higher? Sure, of course. But only 2.5% said often. So I think, you know, that gives us a baseline of what to work with. And just to give you a little more context, of the people who said they did experience discrimination, so this isn't out of the whole respondent group, but just the people who said yes, and some of them chose more than one setting, but 33% of the responses said school. So take that for what it's worth. There was another issue with the data. I can't break that down by school, because if, for example, I responded in school, but I have kids in multiple schools, I can't parse out which school you're talking about. So, so it's just school in general. And then who is most likely to say they experienced discrimination? So 65% of the people who identified as disabled, that was the biggest finding here. 65% of the people, now it wasn't a lot of people that identify as disabled, but 65% of those who did experienced some level of discrimination. Race appears to be a factor, but there were a lot of small racial groups. When I compared white as previously defined to non-white, non-white participants were overrepresented in the, you know, often, sometimes, and rare categories. But again, conditional, like there's a lot of other things that can be going on. It might not be about race at all. But all of the other variables, religion, sexual orientation, language, all of that did not appear to have any relationship with this. We also asked, or you also asked, have you witnessed discrimination in Mansfield? So these numbers are a bit higher, which you would expect. If somebody's experiencing it, likely more people are witnessing that. Again, though, you know, 40% of people didn't experience it at all or didn't witness it at all. But those who do, the 60-ish% of people who did witness it, again, it's that 33%, a third of them are in school. That's the biggest place it's happening. Yeah. The other categories shifted a little bit here. Business came in second. I think before it was third. So the schools are potentially, which makes sense. Kids, like things happen, but that's a place maybe we can target, or you can target. I don't want to say me. Gender identity seemed related. 24% of men reported witnessing discrimination, 32% of women, and then 40% of people who were in one of the other categories. Now, I will say, I went back and forth on this. We had a couple of 1 or 2 folks who identified as transgender male or female. And I went back and forth about adding them to the male or female category or adding them to the other category. And for simple statistics, I wanted to make the other category more robust. And I felt like you all included that as a separate category for a reason. So I wanted to maintain that. If I had larger numbers, I would have actually done 2 separate analyses, including them as male or female, assuming they present that way. And then also including them as like an LGBTQ kind of category, right? So I could have done that separately, but we just didn't have the numbers. Education level appears to be related. People who had a high school degree or less reported witnessing discrimination more often than people with higher education levels. Which is interesting. The 62% with a master's degree or higher, though, I'm creating a story here. So this is not based on the data, but it seems to me to make sense that if teachers who have master's degrees or higher are in schools and these things are happening in schools, maybe that's a maybe. That's not from the data. That was just my thought. The other things don't seem to play a role, though. We asked if people feel safe in Mansfield. So here we're doing pretty well, right? 97, this is the cumulative, but 97.5% of people who responded to this survey feel safe in Mansfield. And with only 5 people disagreeing, there was no way to do any further analysis on that group to find out who they were. It would basically just say, you know, 1 person here and 1 person there, but there's no statistical significance to that. Do you feel welcome in Mansfield? Again, you know, almost 95% of people feel welcome in Mansfield, and 11 people who don't. I couldn't really dive into that. We would need larger numbers for that. The second set of outcomes kind of centered on access. So there was a general question, are you able to access town services? And again, here we have 95% almost of people said yes. And I think those are wins. Like, I think we're doing really well with that, or you all are. I can't take any credit, but doing really well with that. When you get to the specifics though, access to housing, 15% of our community, people who responded, I shouldn't say of the community, 15% of people who responded have some issues with access to housing. So I did dive into that a little bit. The numbers were small, but and this, I think some of this is statistical noise. 7% of respondents with a master's degree or higher said they didn't have access to housing or had some issue with it. And 23% of people with high school associates or bachelor's degrees said the same thing. So that would appear that people with lower education levels have more of an issue with housing, but education level and income often correlate, and there was no difference in terms of income level. Mansfield is a unique place, and there's lots of, it could be statistical noise. It could be that people with a master's degree are grad students at UConn or are teachers who are at starting salaries, like which we all know aren't super high. I don't know, but it could also just be noise, but I wanted to present that to you because it did come up. Do you have access to food? We're doing really well. 96% of our respondents did not have an issue with access to food. Transportation is another one that seemed more problematic even. As a Mansfield resident, I can relate to this. 20% of people had some sort of issue with access to transportation. When you dive, I did a deep dive into this. None of the demographic groups were particularly overrepresented in this category, in this question. It seems like an across the board issue. I mean, and it kind of makes sense. It's a small town without public transportation, with roads that can be challenging to bicycle on and walk on, and like that. That seems like it makes sense to me. But but I will say, I was sort of expecting perhaps people who identified themselves as having a disability would have more of an issue with this. That was not the case. Recreational opportunities, 90% had no problem. Work opportunities, here again, we have 15% of the people who responded to this having some issue with work. And this was another interesting one. These are really small numbers, but it appears that the biggest issue with work access is these middle education levels. So perhaps masters or above, you're working at UConn. I don't know, but it seems like there's this gap in the middle. But to be clear, these numbers are very, very small. 3 people, I mean, right? If there were 9 people with associates level, so 3 people really can skew that percentage, right? So just to be really clear, this is a preliminary, particularly here, analysis. But I wanted to share it because it came out. Healthcare, 90% of people reported no problems with healthcare access. Mental health care, however, we had about 20% of people, 19% of people had some sort of problem with access to mental health care. I dove into this one, and there were 2 groups, and these were some of the most robust findings, actually. The people who indicated any language other than English. The specific languages were 2, I mean, you had 1 person who spoke a language, 2 people who spoke a language. And it really seemed that English and non-English was probably the most relevant. I don't think it's gonna matter so much if they speak French or Mandarin. I think it's the English, non-English. So I went with that. And 42% of people who speak a language other than English reported an issue with mental health access, versus 14% of people who spoke English. So that's a pretty sizable difference. Even with the small numbers, that's a pretty sizable difference. And we did have a decent showing of people who spoke other languages, so it was not a tiny number. And then people who, this 295, oops, sorry. That, I can't do it now, that 5 is supposed to be a percent. People who identified themselves as disabled, 29% of them expressed some sort of issue, while 17% of those who were not disabled had an issue. That's less robust than the language one. But again, I wanted to put it out there. And I apologize for that typo. Again, the tornado warning last night was a little rough on my work habits today.
Oh my gosh, Pam, no need to apologize. This was so fantastic. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you walking us through this, and for the work you put in to analyzing this. I know we didn't make it easy. We're a bunch of amateurs designing the survey instrument itself. So, at a certain point, we'll come back and love to get your input on that design. But the findings and this kind of preliminary evaluation, I think, are really helpful in my mind. You've done what good analysis will do, which is to say, present us with some things that are really interesting and unexpected, but also, well qualified in terms of, what they're not telling, what we can't infer from this data, right? As a kind of initial foray. So I find it really, really fascinating and exciting to consider. But let me just, you're inviting questions, so let me open the floor to the commission. Do folks have questions initially? Yeah, Katie, please.
My question for specifically the mental health care access question and looking at the language differences, were there enough folks specifically with Spanish being the second or primary language spoken at home like, was there enough to pull out anything statistical with that? Just because I know there are a few outpatient clinics that do specifically have Spanish speaking clinicians. I know they're hard to get into and have a wait list a lot of times. But I know that there is that niche that does exist nearby in the community, whereas I don't think there's a lot of providers who speak languages besides Spanish or English right now.
Right. I'm pulling up the data right now so that I can actually give you a legit response to that question instead of this is what I think. My recollection was that there wasn't any huge number of any one group, but I am gonna look right now. Access to mental health. So with Spanish, we had 10 people who spoke Spanish or who responded that they spoke Spanish. And 50% of those people expressed they disagreed that they did not have access. The other 5 agreed or strongly agreed. So even if we do have clinics where people who speak Spanish, or that, where people can communicate in Spanish, it still seems like there's an issue with access.
That is definitely good to know that that's a gap, since that's potentially an area that we can make folks more aware of, that those services do exist, and make sure that other folks know that those services do exist, but also kind of have that recognition of those services might be kind of stretched beyond what their capacities are right now, and kind of see where there might be a greater need for human power.
Absolutely. Yes. So Amy and then Barbara.
Sure, and if I may, I want to thank you. This was so informational, Pam. This was excellent. I did follow up with Ludo Loretto last week, our principal, and asked about whatever survey it is that he's putting together. He said it's still in the works. I had mentioned that we were gathering data. I'm so excited. I did not know that Pam was doing this deeper dive and analysis for us. And I said, this is information that we will be reporting out to. He told me that whatever survey is done at the school will not become in any which way public information. But I also spoke to him about the need for more documentation to be put up on the website in Spanish for starters. This year, we had an incredible influx of students last minute registering for school. And I would say that in my classrooms this year, I'm probably looking at about 15 heritage speakers, if not more. 8 of them came to me in the first week of school, brand new to the district. So as Katie just said, in terms of having that on our radar, getting information out there to families so that they know these services exist, and then also looking into whether or not these services are tapped out, I think is going to become even more critical in this year and maybe moving forward, because it has been, for me, it's exciting as a Spanish teacher, but it's been pretty impressive to see how many students we've had move in that are Spanish speakers and whose parents don't speak much English. In fact, I was stopped in the hallway one day to translate for a family that's new to district. And then today I was sent a document from guidance to do some translating as well. So I'm starting to keep track of that on my end, since we know that those services are supposed to be provided, in one way or another from the school. So I'm keeping a running list of, when am I being asked to do translation now for outside of my general job.
Spanish was by far the biggest group, but there were, I will say, 4 people who reported speaking Mandarin, and 4 who reported Italian.
Yes.
And lots of 1s and 2s for lots of other languages.
Yeah, I think I know the Italian speakers, and certainly I have 2 Mandarin speakers as well. So I definitely know that there are other languages out there that are needing also attention and merit. Are keeping them in mind. But I was really struck by the number of Spanish speakers this year that have moved in. So thank you though. Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Barbara.
I'm just going to talk from my own experience here as a parent trying to find mental health services for my son. And I think the language barrier could be because it's very, very difficult. It's very frustrating. There are very few providers that, unless you're a UConn student, that will take anybody. And if you have a language difficulty on top of that, I can't even imagine trying to wade through the information and trying to find somebody to help. I couldn't do it. I've got a master's degree and I'm a native English speaker. It's just terrible. So I think that that could explain the language component of the mental health thing. I don't know.
There's probably a lot of reasons for it. And again, I have no data on that, but if that's something you all want to tackle, I would wonder if maybe with the proliferation of online therapy during the pandemic, maybe there's some options there for people. I don't know, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we'll need to dig in a little deeper if this, if this bears out as an area of particular concern. Obviously, there are probably multiple factors, Pam, as you say. One is about navigating a difficult system and the challenges that presents. Another may be the particular demographic profile of the providers. But I think, part of what we wanted to do with the survey is just to kind of identify possible areas for additional scrutiny. And this seems to be one that's coming out of this. But Katie.
I was just going to share for anybody who is curious about where Spanish speaking clinicians are available nearby, United Services, that is now in Mansfield, has a couple providers that historically have been Spanish speaking, but Generations over in Willimantic has a much larger staff of folks who offer services in Spanish or English or both. And those tend to be our best luck when we're making referrals for folks who are looking for a non-English speaking clinician to meet that need. But looking at the other languages, there is not a set of those services in anywhere that I am aware of, even really in Connecticut. I think for most languages that aren't Spanish and English, to access that mental health care in kind of a person's non-English language, a lot of times you're using services like Lingual Links, which is very unnatural to the therapeutic process, but it can be better than nothing. But I know even right now in the past year and a half, during the pandemic, we've definitely seen an amplification of the mental health care crisis, just that there aren't enough providers, period, regardless of what language folks are speaking. So I think it certainly becomes a lot more challenging when you're adding a additional kind of caveat to your therapist searches looking for language pieces. So it is definitely a major challenge throughout the field right now. So I will maybe give Generations a call and see how they're doing, since they're kind of my go-to for referring for Spanish speaking folks in our area. And I think they've been really good at having a good turnaround, but I don't know kind of their situation at present. So I can find out that information and share it with the group for next time.
Great. Katie, I have a question. Do you know, in terms of insurance and what have you, are people able to access therapy or therapists there without reliable insurance?
I think that Generations is really good with doing sliding scale. United Services as well does sliding fee scales for folks who don't have adequate insurance or are kind of underinsured. People can kind of talk with them, let them know that that's what they're interested in doing. But there are also providers that take a huge number of insurances. So especially like looking at kids and their mental health, Husky is a wonderful insurance program, and most clinicians in the state of Connecticut want to be paneled with Husky because Husky has a really good reimbursement rate, and it's a nice insurance company to work with. So I think for families who have kids who are Husky eligible, that's a good additional layer for folks to pursue. But I know that is hard to do if you have a language barrier. Access Health CT, which is our state's insurance kind of shopping network, has dual language, like folks who can help you navigate the online shopping experience of finding healthcare. So those folks would be able to help to some degree, at least with Spanish. I'm not sure what other languages they might have access to supporting.
Thank you.
So I think, yeah, these are probably things we want to, kind of continue to develop. Again, the purpose of the survey was exactly this, to begin identifying areas in which we can put some additional effort. But I'm wondering if there are any other questions right now for Pam. Jane?
Yeah, the consistently 20% of people who felt badly treated, I want to know more about who they are. Because again, I just have personal experience and neighbors complaining and stuff like that. But I don't want us to be so focused on all the happy white Christian straight people that we forget about all the other people, because pain is pain. So I don't know what we can do to, and because the numbers are so small, Pam, I understand the problem at least a little bit. But I don't know what we can do about that. But I really want to, I mean, I'm glad so many people are happy, but what we want to find out is who's not happy and what are they not happy about. And so that's kind of me putting that on the agenda.
Yeah, I think when you say, if you're talking about the people who felt like they experienced discrimination, you would definitely need to ask some targeted questions and collect another round of data to really dig into that. Or if you were talking, I'm not sure which 20% of people you were talking about. If you were talking about, like there was a series of questions about access where, around 90% of people were doing really well and 10% maybe had issues. But if you really wanted to dig into any of those, you really would need to honestly collect more comprehensive data. I'm not sure what strategies you all use to circulate the survey. I didn't take it. And I'm pretty active on like the Mansfield Facebook groups, and my kids are in the schools. So I didn't know anything about it because I feel like it's good karma to always take every survey that crosses my desk, because I ask people to take surveys all the time and I want to pay it forward, and maybe that will come back to me when I need the people. So I'm not really sure what the strategies that you all used were, but it seems like another round of maybe fine tuning and collecting data in a more comprehensive way might get you some of those answers, but I can't give them to you now.
Oh, no, I know you can't give them to me now, but what
Yeah.
I'd like us to do is what you just described, and maybe make some of the questions simpler, or cut down the numbers of languages we're asking about, just do some stuff so that you get more robust categories so that you can inquire further. And I think we would need your help we would need you to help us with our questions in order to get that to happen.
Yeah, and I would be happy to do that. Survey development is one of my happy places.
I wish I knew you when I was in graduate school.
Well, I am in graduate school now, so this is what I'm studying, so I do enjoy it, but too many categories is not the problem, because I can combine. So for example, sexual orientation, I combine to straight and not straight. That's how, if they checked straight or if they checked anything else, to make the categories more robust, and that sort of, it doesn't address the differences between those people in those other smaller categories, but at least we can compare them to the largest group.
Mm-hmm.
Always a problematic issue with any kind of survey research. When I do research in schools in Connecticut, we never have enough Indigenous people, students, to have a robust category. We just don't have that population in Connecticut. But when I do something in Minnesota, I do. So it sort of depends on where you are and who's there. So in Mansfield, we just may not have the numbers of all of those specific small groups to dig into those, but I can combine. That's not as much of the problem as just getting more people to take it.
Okay.
I think, because Mansfield, I mean, like those stats I showed at the beginning, 72% white, that feels probably about right to me. White, non-Jewish, not Latinx. That feels, I don't know, feels representative to me. Or maybe underrepresenting the white community in Mansfield a bit, right? I don't know. I would bet that we are more than 76% straight in Mansfield, but I don't know that, right? Some of these 82% that speak English seems probably about right. So it's not necessarily that we don't have, like, we're super off in our proportions. It's more that we just don't have enough people to make those smaller groups robust enough, which is unfortunate.
Yes.
Okay, well, I just want that on the agenda for future work. That's all, and I'll do whatever I can to contribute to that, because that's the part that interests me. So thank you.
No, I appreciate that, Jane, and we will, this is the beginning of a process, and I think we're learning as we go. One of my takeaways certainly is that we need to do a better job with the rollout of the survey and to ensure that people are participating. I think there's a variety of reasons why we didn't get a larger response rate, and just in terms of timing and the channels that it went out. I also know that in the universe of human rights commissions doing surveys, our response rate is actually pretty good compared to what I've seen happen in other towns. So not to say that that's anything we should rest on but that it is, it's a perennial challenge for collecting data in this space. But I also think, one of the things that we did this instrument is that we want to learn what we don't know and to not just go with what we think our experience tells us, because our experience is only our experience and we want to drill down. And so I think that work will be ongoing. In terms of next steps for this, I mean, Pam, I think Heather and I will follow up with you to kind of debrief a little more fully and to pull some of this stuff out for the town charge committee to work up at least a baseline report. One of our goals is to have at least some basic findings available by the time of the Celebrate Mansfield Festival, so that when we have our booth, we'll talk about this in a minute, people can engage with these findings and we can use them as starting points for conversations. Again, as you started out with Pam, right? We can't draw really definitive conclusions on a lot of this, and definitely not on causality. And one of the things we know that has to come through a triangulation of a variety of data, including the conversations we have with people. So hopefully it'll serve that purpose. So, all right. Well, we've kept you. Go ahead.
If that's okay. If you don't have more questions for me.
No. I was going to say, yes, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you all.
Thank you, Pam. Okay. Anything else on this agenda item? I will note one thing here quickly. So I actually just found this today. CT Data Haven, which some of you may know, is an outfit out of New Haven that does a variety of data projects. They just released for every town an equity profile based on census data and a variety of other information. And this is Mansfield's here. If you're at all interested, I've just started to take a look. They're interested in a lot of the same things we were, and I wish they had this a year ago when we were looking around for data and couldn't find any. They don't necessarily do the crosstabs, which is what we brought Pam in to help us with, so we would probably still need to do this, but there's lots of interesting findings one of the things they do, of course, is to compare the 2010 to the 2020 census in terms of the changing profile of our town. And one thing that we can see is that Mansfield is absolutely becoming much more diverse in all its dimensions. So the white population shrank from 78% to 68% over those 10 years. And of course, all the other people of color categories expanded, but I will say Asian Americans expanded the most dramatically to 15%. So the conversation about race and equity in Mansfield needs to center Asians and Asian Americans in a robust way. So I'll leave this aside right now, but I think that's something we can add to this conversation about adding our data to what you can learn from this particular survey. Anything else on the survey work at this point? Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the equity statement, which I believe we have material on for in the packet. And this one, who's taking the lead on this one?
I'm sorry, Glenn, can you repeat that?
The equity statement.
Right. So Felicia and Derek and I had done a draft, which was shared with everybody a few weeks ago, like a few meetings ago, I believe, right? Is that right, Monica? So the idea was that we had put together a draft. I know Derek had made some extra suggestions and that people were going to take a look at it and then, help us start editing, revising, making changes. And I can pull that up and drop that into a link into the chat if I need to. Would that be helpful?
I think we have it in the packet, yes?
I think so.
Yes. Yep. I think it's just it's the first two paragraphs there, right?
Let me get back to it. Derek, do you see it? Felicia, are you seeing it?
I was having trouble seeing it before, but now I can. So, problem solved.
All right. So, thank you. So, comments, thoughts, questions from folks? I guess one comment I have is that it doesn't mention human rights as a human rights commission. Maybe that could factor in somewhere.
Noted that,
And then in the first paragraph, the end says, and ensure that education is accessible and encourages curiosity. We single out education there to the exclusion of other town services or components of the town. I don't know if we, need to enumerate all of the the thing, but that just stuck out to me as like, well, why is it only education that needs to be accessible in that way, or are there other elements?
Yeah,
And
no,
know
I think
part of
you're
this-
absolutely right. I know that we were looking at the statements that the schools had put out already also,
Exactly,
so
yeah.
that could be why we missed human rights, which we shouldn't have, and then why we have that education piece in. But everybody too should have I can share access through the Google Doc directly too, and that way, as people get in there, people can make changes directly to the document as well. That'd be helpful.
Is that allowable, Monica? Way for people to comment?
Right, good question.
Not sure. I would think so because we're in public right now. So any changes that we talk about right now, would be fine. But like, if it were continuing after the meeting, no, it would not be okay.
Okay. And then I would say the second paragraph, we acknowledge that from the time that Mansfield was incorporated on indigenous people's lands. I mean, we could be specific and talk about, Nipmuc, Mohegan, and Pequot land. But all of these are small tweaks to what is otherwise, I think, a really powerful statement. And I appreciate you all putting together this draft.
I have a word that I like that I'm wondering if it's a good fit for a switch, and it's an easy switch. So from embrace their true identity, if we said embrace their authentic identity, I like authenticity as a word that celebrates.
I like that because it speaks to me, but it's also technically more accurate. There is a lot of fighting about true identities, but not much about authentic identities.
And then another word switch proposal I have for that last sentence, where it says, we will build a more creative and empathetic community in which a diversity of ideas is honored. If we looked at, if instead of empathetic, we said affirming, and kind of that we are taking an active stance of affirming diversity and who you are, as opposed to the empathy that's associated with how someone has been wronged and harmed, but we're affirming their authenticity and who they are and celebrating that.
Katie, are you able to get in and make that change? I'm not keeping up with everybody. I'm still trying to remember. It's Nipmuc. What are the other two tribes? Please, Glenn.
Sure, I can add them.
Right. Pequot.
Okay.
I put in a request to edit. I don't know if it'll play nice.
Oh, I don't know. Why didn't you? It might
Well,
have
because
gone.
when I launch things from my Zoom, it's launching outside of my like remote
Sure.
access.
Uh-oh.
Sure. I can do that right now. Yeah, it should be okay now. Ta-da. Okay, everybody who has requested should be able to now. Awesome. Thank you.
I don't think it's playing nice with me, but
No.
I don't know if I'm anonymous platypus or anonymous. I don't even know which one I am right now, Lauren.
I can try here, Katie. I'll go back and I'll add you directly. I'll invite you this way.
Okay. Did you get access, Katie? Were you able to change?
Katie, I just tried it again by putting you directly as in the share. So you might have it pop up again. Where
Did you
can do
use
that.
my work email address?
I will look. I think so.
Okay, then I will try via my
Yeah, at
VPN.
mansfield.org.
Okay,
I
then
did.
I will try it through the VPN rather than like what automatically launches when I'm in Zoom at home. I still can't do it. It looks like someone changed it to affirmative though.
So is it, oops, sorry. Is it the last sentence that you're looking at, Katie?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us what you want to change here. So moreover, we embrace the idea that by working toward greater equity and inclusivity, we will build a more creative and affirmative community in which diversity of ideas is honored. So
I just think, is it affirming or affirmative? Because I don't know the English on that one.
I think it's affirming.
Okay.
Felicia's nodding. Derek, yeah? You know, these two know their stuff.
It's definitely affirming.
okay. Okay. Any other? Okay. So do we like this statement to be communicated to the town council with our recommendation that they adopt it as the equity statement for Mansfield.
Looking for a motion? I'd make that motion.
Sure, we could play the move game. All right, so moved. Do we have a second? All right, so Jane's there seconding. All right, so all those in discussion? Yes, Virginia.
No, never mind. That was accidental.
All right, then all those in favor? Say aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? All right. I think that might have been my first vote I ever called as chair of the Human Rights Commission. Okay, well, this is great. So thank you for doing this. So this is perfect. I will add this to a report that we'll send up to the commission. I'll work with you, Monica, and we'll hopefully get them to adopt it. They may decide to take their own pen to it, but that's all right. I think this is a strong statement from us. Thank you so much, Derek, Felicia, Amy, in leading us through this. This is the council asked us for it, and you helped us deliver.
Well, and thank you all for the changes. I feel much better now that everybody's had their hands in it. So this is great. Thank you.
All right. So the next item is the MLK mural project. I'll just say briefly, we met last week with the organizing committee. It's moving forward. We have selected an artist, Amita Roller, who is a Nigerian-born muralist who now lives in Putnam, has over 20 years of experience doing public art in a variety of settings, and is just a terrific person for us. In particular, she's experienced in working on panels, modular panels, which is going to help us because the surface of the community center is a little weird, so we're going to do panels. The stage we're at now is that we are putting out the community input survey along with the fundraising link. So it was posted to the town website or Facebook page I think earlier this week. We're rolling out with a flyer and a press release, hopefully in the next day or two. And we're really pushing for contributions to both of those. So if I could encourage each of you to take the survey, and if you're so inclined to contribute, the dollars matter, but what matters more is we get numbers of people contributing. So even if you just putting in $1, that helps us along, because we're just we want to show a strong basis of support that enables us to access the matching funds. So we'll be working with all of you to try and push that out and to get enthusiastic participation in that. Once we have that and the design starts to come together with Amita, the next step will be a community paint day, which will be organized potentially several locations. We're talking about the library, outside, maybe under that tent that they've erected, potentially at the community center, potentially another one down in Eagleville, maybe at UConn. So there'll be lots of opportunities for people to get their hands dirty with paint. And then we'll look to do an unveiling probably later in the fall than we had originally anticipated, because that's how we roll. So are there questions on this at this point? Yeah, Amy?
Just a quick question, Glenn, what kind of matching funds are we looking at in terms of, so that, also when you can just say to people, sometimes it also encourages.
Sure. So the total budget is $15,000, and we're on the hook to raise half of it. So Sustainable CT theoretically matches us 1-for-1 for what we raise. So we're looking at $7,500 as our goal. We may be able to bring that down. I'm trying to get the town to kick in a substantial portion, and UConn to kick in a substantial portion, but we'll certainly have probably at least $5,000 to raise through this crowdsourcing initiative. So that's the goal.
Great, thank you. And if I go to the Facebook page, is that something that, pending permission from administration, that we could push out through the school too? Like, could our DD team, make us
Absolutely, yeah. So
promote
so Margaret and I are working on the kind of the flyer piece, and then yes, we were coordinating. Cats love Zoom. It's just the way it is. With the schools, with the library, with so a variety of the folks to push it out. But you can feel free to share, and if you can get people to share already, I know the EO has its own social media presence, and so if they're able to push it out that way, we're gonna obviously need to keep at this for a little while, so it doesn't hurt to push it out now, and then again when we do the press release, and as we get more information. Other questions? Comments on the mural? Okay. Then on to new business, community conversations. Jane, that's you.
That's me. Okay, I've been working on this. I put together a committee, and the committee was designed, and Amy, I never got to you, but I would like you to come to the committee, please. And I'd love to have grad interns, but I need your brain. Then we can use their efforts. So anyway, the committee involves people from all elements of our community, plus one person who's representing the Wyndham Wilmanic chapter of NAACP. So we're going to have our first meeting next week. We have I have a list of about 6 or 7 potential topics, and I don't know how many topics we're actually going to wind up talking about, but what I've got, and I think it pretty much, I tried to base it off what I thought was going to come out of the survey. The first topic is the only one that's confirmed. There is a woman named Debbie Irving who's written a book called Waking Up White, and it's a wonderful book. And when I talked to her, I heard her when in the Suffield program. She's a fantastic speaker, and even on Zoom, she draws the audience in. But I discovered a community organizer, and she wants everybody who's involved in this to go to her website and start doing the 21-day reflection on the nature of your environment, who's in it, and how they're being treated. And I sent a note to my committee with the link to the website. I will send it to Monica to send out to all of you. She kept emphasizing, this wasn't her, it was her assistant. She said, you've got to get the whole Human Rights Committee thinking, because this is a town organizing event. My speech isn't the first effort, it's the final effort of a bunch of people learning how to talk about what it means to wake up white. So that's the only topic that's confirmed. Other topics that I'm thinking about and want to meet with the committee about are, I'm going to call it Getting to Know Your Neighbors, and I want to have a theme of telling family stories and growing up in Mansfield and what that's like, and I want people from underrepresented groups. So I've got 2 Black families who've been here for 100 years, and one of the sons of that family, Anthony Hobson, is on the committee, and I hope Pat Phineas will be there as well. So that, what's it like to grow up Black in Mansfield? Then I would like to do something with sexual orientation, and I really would like one of those vignette things that high school people do when they're trying to get audiences in. And I've talked to Katie about it briefly, but if there are, and Amy, this is probably in your domain, a few students who can do a couple of vignettes on what it's like to be a sexually, fluid person, let's say that, because I don't want to put anybody in a box, but I want some kids who can really act out what it's like to be a kid here in this, and to feel like you're exploring sexual orientation in one way or another. So that's another. Also, what it's like to be a farmer in Mansfield. And Stacy Stearns of the Stearns Family Farm, I am hoping to work with to get her, maybe a couple of other farmers and maybe a couple of farm workers to do a presentation. And then the last one that's on my mind right now is people who need special services, whatever they are, and what it's like to live here if you need special services. And I'm going to talk to Kathy Easley, who is the town social worker, who I think can put me on the right track to finding people and how we're going to talk about that. So those are the groups. And what I want to do is to have 5 or 6 groups every couple of weeks on Zoom, talking to people about what it's like for them to live in Mansfield. And we have a way to moderate that so that people can't be disruptive if they're in the mood to be disruptive. And that I'm going to need to raise money. The library is going to support this effort with their technology, but I haven't talked to Leslie in the library for quite some time, and I have to confirm that with her. And then I'm going to need help with public relations, community support. And I think ultimately, Glenn, we're going to need the town council to make a statement saying we think this is a great idea. People should know each other better. So when we get closer to that, my target start date is the middle of January. So that's where we are with that. And the biggest thing that I know absolutely nothing about is how to get $10,000. And Kathy told me several funding sources that are like foundations around here. And I'm going to start with Liberty Bank, but I need somebody to coach me on that or get somebody. Anthony Hobson actually knows how to do that. So I may just ask him to try to get going on that. But I got the biggest thing that I have to do is get money, because I don't think we'll have to pay for the library, but we're definitely going to have to pay for Debbie Irving, and we may need to pay some other people. And just as a matter of courtesy, we should give everybody who participates some kind of small honorarium. So that's where I am with all of that. And I'm not too worried about making it happen in terms of getting the group of people who will talk to the town. I am concerned about making sure everybody knows it's going on. It's going to be at night on Zoom. In the winter, you're bored to death. Come watch, come talk, come listen to your neighbors talk. And then of course there's the money issue. So that's where I am with it right now. And I'm very happy about the committee. It's very diverse, and that's exactly what I wanted. And Amy, somebody ratted you out and said that you really know how to organize these things, and that I should talk to you before I talk to anybody else. So I'm sure I will be doing that shortly.
We will definitely be in touch, Jane. It was
okay.
a crazy start to the year, but I sent you an email just before our meeting
Okay.
tonight. So yeah, I have not forgotten you.
I'm not the kind of person who likes to be a total fool in front of hundreds of people. It just doesn't appeal to me. So I would really like to make this work, but I think it will. And everybody I've spoken to has been very enthusiastic about the idea. So let's see what happens. That's my report on that. Comments, thoughts? And Amy, right now, I really need you to think about what are you calling your new gender club? Their new name?
The Gender and Sexuality Alliance.
Gender Sexuality Alliance. See if there's any aspiring actors and actresses in there who can work up a good little skit about going to school.
I made myself a note.
Okay, thank you. That's what I need you to do, because you know them and I don't know them. Okay, so that's where I am with that project. Comments? Thoughts?
Would we want to tap UConn in any aspects of that, knowing that they're also a part of our community for at least like 9 months of the year? And I know specifically when I think about our LGBTQ community as Mansfield as a whole, the Rainbow Center is an amazing resource.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. What I don't want to do is to talk to their diversity guy, because I have found him to be brilliant and very competent, but incredibly slow. I think he's really, really good at what he does, but I move a lot faster than that. But I know the people in the Rainbow Center. I'd love to do that. So I will just put that down on my list of people. I wish Flo was still here, but she's not. So I will get in touch with them. Thank you. And you're my other resource for these people. So I thank you for that too. Comments, other thoughts, things I forgot. Karen, I'm going to, Barbara, rather, I'm going to need you to talk to me about the struggles of people trying to access services if they have special needs, because I don't have personal knowledge of most of this stuff, and I need people who do to share their ideas and their experiences so we can frame the presentations in a way that gets people's attention and makes them realize we need to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that. That is the end of my report on that subject.
All right, thank you, Jane. One quick question, actually, for Monica. So if Jane is soliciting donations to support this, does she need? Well, I'm assuming she's going to need some briefing from the town fiscal office on how to do so ethically and
Yeah.
as well as effectively.
I think we're gonna have to get in touch with Margaret or Tasha from the town manager's office.
I talked to Margaret initially,
Okay.
and I plan to go back to Margaret as my first step. And she's the one that gave me the names of the local donors that support things like this. So I'll go back to Margaret.
Yeah.
I know I understand the issues, Glenn.
My guess is if you were to establish this as a specific partnership with a specific department, that potentially takes care of having to like incorporate your own charitable organization, like 501(c) or whatever,
Right.
like kind of that is. And then it would potentially be, if you were applying for grants, a conjoint effort, so that then the town would potentially become the fiduciary of the money, and it would be that co-sponsored kind of dynamic.
Yeah, that's exactly what she said, because the last thing she wanted was me to go off and have some separate organization. And she said, if you do it with the town office, then we cover you and you're fine. So that's where I am. And I decided to crank up on Labor Day, so I'm cranky, and that's on the list.
So and it sounds like the library is your key partner in this, but even so, I think you need to make sure you're oriented to the proper channels for which to be soliciting to. So
is that related to the library, or is that, who is that related to?
The whole town, right? So the library is a part of the town, and so I think the advice would come from the town manager's office, and then work through the library.
Well, I will carbon you on everything I write and let you know who I'm talking to, so I don't get too far off the tracks.
Great.
Because I certainly don't want to mess up this part of it.
And if you hit a point where you need some support with grant writing, I have more experience than I care to admit.
Yeah, I think Anthony Hobson has a lot of experience with this, and I haven't talked to him with it, but after I talk to him, I will then get back around to everybody else. But in the meanwhile, what I really need everybody to do, if you have any time at all, is go to debbieirving.com, and I'll send the link around again. In fact, I'll get it before we leave and put it in the chat so that you can see. It's a 21-day reflection process. And she said, everybody just kind of has to pay attention to what the issues are in your town. And we've had a good presentation tonight. And then it's, you can do everything from read a book to watch a YouTube, to think about what you noticed today, to reflect on your childhood, whatever you want to do. There's a dozen different things, but I'll send you all the email that I sent the committee, so you see what I said to them.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments for Jane? All right. Thank you for putting this together, Jane, as always. I think it's exciting work and important to do. The next item is our Celebrate Mansfield Festival.
Oh, you skipped Susan Johnson.
Oh, yeah, I did. Right.
That's
you too, right?
Yep. Let me just, this is very quick. I was talking to Susan Johnson about something. It was about the Yukon land grab. And I had a very nice conversation with her, and she told me about an idea she has where she wants to see if she can get access to what used to be the training school and then was the prison, because she is excruciatingly aware of the problems of homeless people and addicted people and people with mental illness in Willimantic. And they have no place to go, and they have no central place to access services. And it's really horrible as far as she's concerned. And so she's looking at this large building, and she wants to, and she's been working on this in the legislature for quite some time. She wants to find out if there is any way she can use some portion of that facility to set up an all-purpose resource center for people with disabilities, people who are addicted, people coming out, people who are homeless, all this kind of stuff. And she is concerned about everybody in the area, not just the people who live in Willimantic. And one of the things we know is that a lot of people who go to the No Free Center in Willimantic are Mansfield residents, because we don't have anything like that. So Susan is cooking up this idea. That's the only way I can describe it. She's been working at it in the legislature for a couple of years, and she just wants a lot of people to know what she's doing. And she requested to be invited to our meeting, and I think November is the time that she said she might be available, just so she can share her idea and get feedback and let you know what she's up to. And I think it's an enormous, when I told her that we used to, she has this vision of UConn grad students who are being trained to work with these kinds of people, going over there and doing internships and all kinds of resources that we could put together to help homeless people and addicted people particularly. And I told her that when I first got here in the 70s, they used to go, the psych grad students and undergrads used to go to Mansfield Training School and sit around and just talk to the people who lived there. And that's what they were doing. They were helping them feel engaged with the community and let them know that somebody cared that they were there. And she didn't even know that that had happened. And that wasn't that long ago. Because I remember they used to take busloads of people over there just to talk to people, help them feel like they were more involved, play cards with them, whatever. And so she's looking at how can we bring all the resources of this community together with an empty facility and support basically our homeless population, which immediately becomes a housing and human rights issue. So she just wants to come tell everybody what she's doing. And if we could invite her, she would appreciate it.
Okay.
Glenn, will you do that? Or
I will.
yeah, that I think that
why we wouldn't do that. So that sounds like a great opportunity. So I'm happy.
And she, I think she knows it's a long-term project. She's been at it for a while already, but she really cares about it.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, that's sounds very interesting. So I'd be excited to learn more. So we'll put that. I'll reach out to her and we'll get her, as you say, probably for November then.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Pretty straightforward.
I don't really have so much a question as I do a comment, or more accurately, an extension of what Jane stated just now. First off, I will say I will in the Wyndham-Willimantic area, because I am well aware that that region has a widespread reputation for having very high drug addiction rates, particularly with regard to opioids. I know Wyndham and Willimantic in particular has a reputation for that. So clearly there are many people in the region that need those services and would benefit from them. But and also on the specific services that I believe should be provided there, I'm not sure if this is the sort of idea that Susan Johnson had in mind, but like particularly with regard to like rehabilitation and shelter services, that this sort of idea could be idea for purposing the old prison facility for the purposes that Jane outlined. It is absolutely a human rights issue, especially concerning the well-being and opportunities of those suffering from addiction, and also those who are homeless, and that providing them with access to decent shelter with decent accommodations not only provides them with how should I phrase this? Not only provides them with access to shelter alone in terms of like protecting them from the outside elements, which could also be a significant problem, particularly in New England, but also provide them with services that may be necessary and necessary to connect them with opportunities in the broader community. So this could really serve to benefit people. And I believe inviting Susan Johnson to communicate this idea with us particularly would kind of bring us and also us sort of contribute to this idea at the municipal level, so that this sort of thing has a higher probability of actually being enacted. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure she'll appreciate it too.
Right. Thank you, Derek. So it sounds like it is something we'd like to hear from her about. So we will set that up and make that happen. Okay, the next item is the Celebrate Mansfield Festival. This is scheduled for the first weekend in October. Margaret Chady is organizing a booth for our commission. And the Outreach and Communications Subcommittee is working on a series of activities and displays to be featured in our booth. It's our first chance to really get in person with the community. So I think it's a really great opportunity. As I said, I'd hoped we were going to have some of the results of the survey to share as a prompt for discussion. So that'll be a feature of it. But what we really need is a set of volunteers to staff the booth. So I think what we can do is set up a sign-up sheet and ask everyone who's available to put your name down from cleanup, or from setup through the staffing of the booth through cleanup. One question Margaret had was whether any of us have access to a pop-up that we could use, since the town has only a limited number, so they're trying to crowdsource some if anybody has them.
I can check because youth services, so I'm not going to be available to be there because I'm going to be at the youth services one. But youth services and the human services are doing a dual table. So between our two kind of service groups, we might have an extra pop-up. So I can check and see if we're planning on using the senior center's pop-up or if we're planning on using ours, and if there might be potentially an extra one in the mix somewhere.
Awesome. That would be fantastic, Katie. So I'll loop in Margaret with that, and then we'll divvy up the pop-ups accordingly. I think obviously the goals for the festival are really around that outreach and engagement to let the town know we're here. Some people do know, a lot of people don't know. And to help facilitate a deeper understanding of our mission, and to really take it as an opportunity to have some conversations around some of the critical issues we face. So if there's anybody who would who's not in the communications and outreach committee and would like to join the effort to design different kinds of activities or help shape those, let me know, and I can plug you into that group as well.
Is that the 2nd of October?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, so the 2nd of October, I think the festival runs like 10 to 2 or 3 or something like that. So, an hour before for setup and an hour afterward for cleanup. So we'll build in some 2-hour shifts or something like that. And if you're able to be there, that would be greatly appreciated. So. Okay. Any questions, comments on that? Pretty straightforward. Again, the communications and outreach is taking the lead there. Okay, the next item is refugee newcomer policy. So council member Ron Shuren reached out to me last week to inquire as to whether the commission might help draft a statement for the council with regard to welcoming Afghan refugees. And I said, maybe, but I'd really rather provide some advice in council on adopting policies that would make Mansfield a welcoming community, not just for Afghan refugees, but for all newcomers. And he was very supportive of that, as was the mayor. And so they have asked, and I've talked to Ryan as well, the town manager, about some outreach to IRIS, the Immigrated Refugee and Immigration Services out of New Haven, which is the leading refugee resettlement agency in the state and really a model nationally, to engage them. I've also begun some outreach with an organization called Welcoming America, which, as the name suggests, is an organization that supports essentially immigrant-friendly communities in a variety of dimensions. They have a special program for rural communities, which I've sent an inquiry in to find out more about how we can become involved with that, given that Mansfield is a rural place. But I think this is a real opportunity for us, again, in the context of the work we do. And I'm just reflecting on the most recent census data, which shows that the parts of our community that are growing are the Latinx and Asian communities, many of whom are immigrants. And that some of the gaps that were identified, and obviously the language sticks out in terms of access to mental health services, but that might be another area that we really focus on. So I see this as a real opportunity to shape some forward-looking policies for the town. I also see this as a real opportunity for us to build some regional cooperation. These town borders are in some ways very artificial, but also in some ways extremely rigid. And there's a tendency within Connecticut to think, hyper locally in a way that can be problematic for addressing the core concerns. And given the relationship with Wyndham, I think this is an area in which we could build some significant points of cooperation. So I guess what I'm at this point asking the commission to do is your thoughts on this as an area for us to focus on. And then assuming that maybe we want to move forward with it, volunteers to join at least this initial phase of beginning to put something together. I think the hope is we have some initial recommendations for not the next council meeting, which is next week, but the following one, the last one in September, at least a beginning. The situation with Afghan resettlement is very fluid, but IRIS is expecting to resettle hundreds, if not thousands, of families in the next 6 months, and so they are gearing up for some pretty significant capacity building. Monica?
Do you think that we should send this to maybe the town charge subcommittee? Just because it's going to council asked for it, and council created our charge. Maybe that fits in that way.
It could, yeah. No, I think that's a good idea. But I know, I want to make sure if there's anybody else who's not on town charge but would like to contribute to that, they can also join that conversation.
I'm just thinking for FOI purposes and having it public, it would be good for if they want to join the town charge meeting, but we have to make sure it's public.
It's a real meeting, yeah, absolutely. All right. Feels a little bit like the tornado warning is catching up with everybody, but I'm going to take your side, Katie.
I have a thought that might be helpful to that packet, if a packet is to be made, in kind of looking at a breakdown of services available as to what level of residency and documentation is required. So some things require, citizenship, and some things don't ask about citizenship. Some things we specifically don't ask about. And I know there are different grants that we manage in the Human Services Department, and other different things that we do our own internal fundraising on. So just being able to put together a table that clearly lays out, what documentation and what level of resident status is accessible to what, because I think that's also helpful for folks who are here undocumented to know what they can access without risk and worry. And I think that would be a nice thing to include as part of that. And certainly Human Services could be a good resource for that, knowing there's about 1 million different programs, but that we would be able to kind of break that down in a way that hopefully makes those services clear and accessible for the folks who are looking for them, and knowing what they qualify for versus what they wouldn't be eligible for.
So when you say we might be able to do that, Katie, are you suggesting maybe you could help us put together at least the initial version of such an audit?
I am saying that I know some people and I do some things. So I can get in touch with Dorothy Delvell and Kathy Ann Easley over at the Human Services area. And they are the experts in all of these things. So I can do my best to pick their brains to kind of see what there is, and if we can make a table that makes sense.
Great. That would be super helpful. Derek?
I just want to add, not documentation hard for what, and providing immigrants with knowledge of what they can access without, I believe, as she said, without risk and worry or something to that effect. Yeah, really, just ensuring that immigrants, all right, can actually acquire some sense of comfort and inclusion in this community as well is quite important. But I believe what we also need to, address here, and perhaps even more so, is the actual services that we are providing themselves. And this also is kind of a springboard off of the gaps that were mentioned earlier in some of those services that are provided here in terms of the language that one typically speaks. So yeah. People to understand each other adequately for quite obvious reasons. But also I do want to mention as well, beyond these gaps, the situation itself with the Afghan refugee resettlement. This is obviously occurring at quite an important moment in history. States and communities across the nation are attempting to manage this Afghan refugee situation. So I believe, particularly within that broader context, it will be especially important for us to provide adequate services for these immigrants, particularly in terms of what I'm going to say is integrating them into the community without pulverizing their cultural identity. I do want to absolutely draw that line, because often it is quite significantly blurred in the process of such integration. And a successful policy in doing that actually not only serves as a victory for the town in terms of our own inclusivity, but also a symbolic victory for surrounding communities to provide them with a model that they could potentially derive their own policies from. And I also want to mention the point Glenn made about the growing Hispanic and Asian communities in Mansfield. This is actually part of a national trend. The recent 2020 census data released reveals this. The Hispanic and Latinx ethnic group, and as well as the Asian racial group, are among the fastest growing racial and ethnic groups in the nation, and the two predominant ones that contributed to the increasing racial diversity of the United States. In terms of services and ensuring greater inclusion of those growing communities, is absolutely crucial in terms of not only creating a better environment for them in the town, but also providing them with better opportunities for employment, for communication, for engagement, etc. in this region. So they do not, they are not provided with the sense that they are ostracized. I also want to articulate the point, finally, that that I kind of forgot what I was about to say on this one, but oh dear, you might come back to me. But, yeah, I also wanted to mention that, yeah, like it was mentioned. And what I really want to emphasize is that if we fail to address the needs and concerns of these growing populations in our town, it would really just become a growing problem over time, and would probably make these problems more difficult to address in the future. So also addressing these sooner rather than later is particularly important.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Derek. I think it is a part of our charge to address this, and it seems like it's an important moment to do so for all the reasons you suggested. So we will add that to the town charge subcommittee's agenda to pursue, and likely be reporting out to the town council later this month. So if there's no other comments on that agenda item, we'll come to our final piece of new business, which is the affordable housing that's on there. I think, Jane, you put it on there.
Yeah, I put it on at your request. And I want to acknowledge that the middle of it is all Derek's. He did the research, and for which I am very grateful. I did the narrative and act like a professor. But the thing that I want to ask is, we wrote this before UConn did its little 180. And so I think that everything we said ought to be said and shared around with whoever we want to say it to. But I don't know what the implications of UConn's change of heart / new face has for all of this. We have an affordable housing target in Mansfield. The mayor's talked about it, but I don't trust UConn. That's what it comes down to. And I know this is being recorded. We've got a target and we don't know what they're going to do. And if they decide to do something that they haven't told us about, I don't know what this has to do with anything. So I'm just going to leave it on the table because I don't know what the status of this statement is. We were trying to make a very strong statement that affordable housing is absolutely essential and that it is of concern to the university, because a lot of the people who can't afford to live here work at UConn in low-paying jobs. And oh, by the way, they happen to be very often people of color. That's the main point, and all the statistics support that. So I am at a loss for what to do next, given the change in behavior from UConn.
All right. Thank you, Jane and Derek, so much for putting this together. That report is in your packet. I think it summarizes a little bit about what we learned in the survey, as well as it looks like there are other sources of data that were drawn on in order to draw some of these conclusions. I think we raised this last time, and one of the things I recommended was that there was some outreach to be done with the group conducting the housing access survey, right? Our survey came out just after the affordable housing one. I know obviously that policy was in the works for a long time and was released at the same moment that the UConn land grab took place, and that this is a deeply contentious and evolving conversation, and I would support the commission being part of it. So my recommendation would be that we get in touch with was it planning and zoning that spearheaded the affordable housing, planning and zoning, to share the concerns you might have, and then to begin the conversation about how we can support Mansfield's plan to address this.
Okay. Do you want me to do that, or are you going to do that?
I would love for you to do it, Jane.
All right. Okay, so what we really want to know is, this is our statement on the situation currently, and what can we do to support you in your efforts to increase affordable housing in the community?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we're gonna necessarily say this is the commission statement, but I think these are, you can share this as what you and Derek drew from the survey and from other research, and so some of the concerns that have come up. I think, I don't know if I will say, I don't think at this meeting we want to go line by line through this thing and try and approve it as an official statement from the commission, because it's 8 minutes to 9. But I think it's a good working document for you to be taking to engage those conversations, right? So
Will do.
okay.
Yes, I think your comment about last night's wake up in the middle of the night is beginning to get to everybody is certainly true, and it's certainly getting to me.
Yeah.
Or
And
family
again,
time in the basement at 4 a.m, as Shannon Zion likes to say.
exactly. Monica?
I just wanted to make sure, Derek and Jane, do either of you or both of you have that contact in planning? They asked me to use a specific person who.
No, I don't, and I would like it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I had emailed it a while ago and I can't find it, but I'll look through it and
Okay,
forward it to you.
thank you.
Okay. Derek?
Quick point of the document. I noted that this is a version that was written before some additional revisions that we made to it.
Oh, no.
So I just do want to bring it up before we go and publish this as part of anything. So perhaps we should include the revised version as well.
We absolutely should include the revised version. Will you send that to Monica, and then she can send it to everybody? Yeah,
Sure.
I'm sorry. That's my
And do that
mistake.
right now.
That's good. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So so if you can take the lead on that, Jane, and then you can
Well-
report back to us on what you found. Again, I think, given that there are lots of stakeholders at the table working to address this, I think many of them obviously in good faith, we can play a supporting role in this initiative and make sure that the main concerns around equity are foregrounded, even though I have no reason to believe that that's not currently a part of the consideration, but our charge is to make sure that that is front and center.
Sure.
So this is good.
That's good.
Other comments, thoughts? Okay, so that I think brings us to the end of new business. We have none communications this cycle around. Reports of the subcommittees. I think we kind of covered most of that in the old and new business. So unless somebody really has something else they need to report out on those, we can say those boxes are checked. And there appear to be no members of the public. Monica?
No, I'm sorry. There was a revised agenda sent out. I sent it yesterday, probably around, oh goodness, right before I left, so probably around 4:30. It includes the Indigenous Peoples Day. It's number or F under.
Right. Okay. Sorry. You
yeah,
thought you
so-
were getting away, everyone, but you're not.
Sorry.
Yeah, so Indigenous Peoples Day, I think we can keep this this short, but the town charge committee, where am I? The town charge committee decided to re-engage Indigenous peoples again, given the role we played last time, to continue to advance our practice in this. We're going to be reaching out to the library and the schools to collaborate on any potential programming to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day this year. And the other thing we're going to do, and I've reached out to the mayor on this, is to prepare a communication between the mayor and the tribal governments of the Nipmuc, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, and Mohegan tribal nations, to go beyond this kind of just simply acknowledgement, to beginning a dialogue about being responsible neighbors in the shared land. And so, of course, that's government to government at the highest level, and so that needs to come from the mayor. So we'll be working with her on putting together an appropriate communication. Yes, Monica.
Also, I think, I don't know if Derek and Felicia worked on something for the webpage.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
in contact with the library right now. They're sending a list of books by the end of the month, hopefully, so that we can put that on the website. I'm working on Derek and I kind of split it up. So he was finding a lot of resources, and I still have some more to find, but we've been working on that.
So I know that Margaret, I think Margaret's working with you guys on that, right? Okay. I talked with her briefly. I guess she was unable to make it today. But she did, or was hoping that we could approve something either tonight. Maybe we can say that you two can go to the town charge or the Communications and Outreach Subcommittee, so we can have it posted well before Indigenous Peoples Day. We don't want it to just like come up on, at least that was
Right,
what
yeah.
my understanding was from Margaret.
So we don't have to come back to this group for approval of what we produce, is the idea.
Or we can have a special meeting just to approve it. That's those are the two options I see.
Okay.
But I thought maybe if we discuss it tonight, then we know what we're gonna do moving forward.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Monica. So yes. And I did see a note that went out from Margaret also connecting with the Historical Society to pull them in. And so the idea would be to create a kind of landing page that contains last year's resolution, which will be readopted this year, I'm presuming, as well as some links to resources and other information, as well as maybe a short narrative about the Indigenous heritage in Mansfield specifically. So how do folks feel? Are you comfortable approving or essentially authorizing the town charge subcommittee to approve whatever the version of that website is? Or would you prefer to have a special session called of the full commission at some point prior to Indigenous Peoples Day?
I trust these individuals a great deal, so I am inclined to say that, you know, this, and I feel like I almost should recuse myself since I am on the subcommittee. But I am comfortable with either way. I feel that if we meet as a committee to approve something, it'll probably be a really fast meeting, but also respect that everybody is busy. Students have homework, other people have other things in their lives that need doing. But I would trust us to just kind of push this to the other committee to say yes or no. That's my 2 cents.
Others? Comfortable with that?
I'm fine with it.
Virginia, you too? Okay. I'm going to assume that this is adopted by consensus then. So we will have the town charge committee take a look at those materials before they go out. But we can presume that they will go out and be a great addition to the town's recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day. So, all right. So with that, then the amended version of the agenda, item F cleared. Yes, Katie.
I was just going to throw out, in case you guys don't already have tools that you're using for your web development stuff, canva.com, they have free versions of it. It's super duper easy. We use it for all of our graphics, but you guys might have something fancy already. But if you don't, it's free and it's easy and it makes things pretty and it makes you look like you know what you're doing even when you don't.
All right. Pro tip. Okay. Well, so with that, then we'll adjourn because I think we're done.
Good
All
night,
right.
everybody.
Thank you all. Yes. Bury your phones in the backyard tonight, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.